General Thexaler stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dawn, and looked at the blue planet through the viewing screen. Earth. That was what the natives called their small world. It looked peaceful from space. White clouds moved slowly across blue oceans. Green and brown landmasses sat beneath the clouds. It reminded him of 100 other worlds he had conquered in his long career. 47 worlds. That was his record. 47 planets had fallen under Zarnoth rule because of him. This would be number 48. It would be easy, just like the others. The humans had primitive technology. Their weapons were weak. Their ships were slow. This conquest would take less time than most. "General, the fleet is in position," his tactical officer said. The officer's scales gleamed under the bridge lights. His voice was calm and professional. Thexalar nodded. 200 warships. The largest invasion force the Zarnoth Imperium had assembled in 20 years. It was probably too many ships for such a weak enemy, but the Imperium wanted Earth conquered quickly. They wanted to send a message to other worlds in this sector. "What is the status of the enemy fleet?" Thexalar asked. 30 human vessels approaching, sir. They are moving into defensive formation around the planet. 30 ships against 200. The humans were brave. Stupid, but brave. Thexalar had seen this before. Small worlds always tried to defend themselves at first. They always failed. After their fleet was destroyed, they always surrendered. It was the pattern of conquest. It never changed. "Open a communication channel to their flagship," Thexalar ordered. The screen changed. A human face appeared. It was a female with dark skin and short black hair. She wore a military uniform covered in symbols and colors. Her eyes were hard. This was Admiral Chen Wei, according to the intelligence reports. "I am General Thexalar of the Zarnoth Imperium," he said in the common galactic language. "You will surrender your world immediately. If you comply, your people will be treated fairly under Imperium law. If you resist, you will be destroyed." The human admiral stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "General Thexalar," she said slowly, "let me make our position very clear. Earth does not surrender. We will fight you with everything we have. We will make you regret coming here." Thexalar felt a flicker of surprise. Most species begged for mercy. They tried to negotiate. They offered tribute. "This human showed no fear at all. You cannot win," he said. "Look at your situation. You have 30 ships. We have 200. Your technology is inferior. This is not bravery. This is suicide." "Maybe," Admiral Chen said, "but we will make you pay for every meter of ground. We will make you pay for every human life. And when you finally leave our world, you will remember us." "That is a promise." The screen went dark. The human had ended the communication. Thexalar felt amused. The human admiral had spirit. It would not save her or her world, but it was entertaining. He turned to his tactical officer. "Destroy their fleet," he ordered. "Leave no survivors." The battle lasted 6 hours. The human ships fought well. Better than Thexalar had expected. They used clever tactics. They coordinated their attacks. They targeted the weak points in Zarnoth ship designs. But it was not enough. It could never be enough. One by one, the human ships exploded into fire and metal. One by one, they fell silent. When it was over, all 30 human vessels were destroyed. The Zarnoth fleet had lost only 3 ships. It was an acceptable exchange. A good exchange, even. "Send another message to Earth," Thexalar said. "Tell them their fleet is gone. Tell them they have 48 hours to surrender. If they do not comply, we will begin bombardment of their cities." The message was sent. Thexalar waited for the reply. It came 12 hours later. It was not a surrender. It was 3 words in the human language, translated by the ship's computer. "Come and take it." Thexalar read the message 3 times. He did not understand. No species had ever refused surrender after losing their defensive fleet. Not in 200 years of Imperium expansion. Not once. "What does this mean?" he asked his communications officer. "It is a phrase from human history, General. An old expression. It means they will not surrender. It means we must take their world by force." Thexalar sat back in his command chair. This was unusual. But it changed nothing. The humans could not stop an invasion. They had no fleet. They had no orbital defenses. They were defenseless. "Prepare the invasion force," he said. "We will land troops in all major population centers. Standard occupation protocol. This will be over in a week." His officers moved to carry out the orders. Thexalar watched the blue planet on the screen. Somewhere down there, Admiral Chen Wei was preparing her people for the invasion. She thought she could resist. She thought she could make him regret this conquest. It was foolish. Every conquered species thought the same thing at first. They all learned the truth soon enough. The Zarnoth always won. They always won because they had superior technology. They always won because they had superior numbers. They always won because they followed the rules of civilized warfare. They did not torture prisoners. They did not target civilians. They did not use forbidden weapons. They conquered with honor, and the humans, they would learn to accept Zarnoth rule. They would learn to be grateful for the peace and order the Imperium brought. They all did, eventually. 3 days later, the invasion began. 1,000 dropships fell from the sky like metal rain. They landed in every major city on Earth: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, São Paulo, Mumbai, Cairo. The ships touched down in the centers of these cities, their doors opening to release Zarnoth soldiers. Thexalar watched from the crimson dawn. Everything was going according to plan. The cities were empty. The humans had evacuated their populations. That was expected. That was smart. It meant fewer civilian casualties. The Imperium preferred it this way. "Sir, we have secured landing zones in all target cities," the tactical officer reported. "No resistance encountered. The cities appear to be abandoned." "Begin the occupation," Thexalar ordered. "Move troops into defensive positions. Establish command centers. Locate the human military forces." He felt confident. The hard part was over. The fleet battle was won. The landing was successful. Now came the easy part. The humans would hide in their countryside and mountains. The Zarnoth would hunt them down. The humans would run out of supplies and weapons. Then they would surrender. It always happened this way. But as the sun set on Earth that first day, something happened that Thexalar did not expect. Reports began coming in from the ground forces. Strange reports, confusing reports, buildings exploding without warning, soldiers disappearing during patrols, supplies going missing from secure locations, weapons fire from unknown positions. And always, when the Zarnoth troops investigated, they found nothing. No enemy soldiers, no military installations, just empty buildings and silent streets. "What is happening down there?" Thexalar demanded. His ground commander appeared on the screen. The commander looked worried. That was unusual. Zarnoth officers did not show worry easily. "General, we are taking casualties. The humans are using tactics we have never seen before. They do not form battle lines. They do not defend positions. They attack and disappear. They strike at night. They use the terrain to hide. They blend in with the civilian population." "This is irregular," Thexalar said. "But it is not effective. How many casualties have we suffered?" 300 soldiers in the first day, sir." Thexalar sat up straight. 300? In one day? That was more than he had lost in the entire conquest of his last 3 worlds combined. "That is unacceptable," he said. "Increase security. Double the patrols. Find these human fighters and eliminate them." "Yes, General." The screen went dark. Thexalar looked at Earth again. The planet looked the same, blue and peaceful. But something was wrong. Something was different about these humans. They did not fight like other species. They did not follow the normal patterns. For the first time in 47 conquests, General Thexalar felt a small seed of doubt growing in his mind. But he pushed it away. This was just a difficult beginning. The humans would break eventually. They always did. Every species did. The first week of occupation turned into the first month. General Thexalar no longer felt confident. He felt confused. He felt frustrated. And for the first time in his military career, he felt something close to fear. The casualties kept climbing. 500 soldiers, then 1,000, then 2,000. Every day brought more deaths, more wounded, more missing troops who were never found. The humans were ghosts. They appeared from nowhere. They struck without warning. They killed with brutal efficiency. Then they vanished before the Zarnoth could respond. Thexalar had called an emergency meeting with his field commanders. They gathered in the command center he had established in what the humans called Washington. The building had once been important to the human government. Now it served as the heart of Zarnoth operations. "Report," Thexalar said. His voice was harsh. He was tired. He had not slept properly in days. Commander Zexathan spoke first. He commanded the forces in the North American region. "General, we control the major cities, but the countryside is hostile. We lose soldiers every time we send out patrols. The humans have fortified the rural areas. They have turned every town, every village, every farm into a fighting position." "What about the supply lines?" Thexelar asked. "Under constant attack, sir. The humans strike our convoys. They destroy our supply depots. They poison our water sources. They burn our fuel storage." Commander Ralvex from the European theater spoke next. "Sir, we captured a human resistance fighter 3 days ago. We interrogated him according to Imperium protocol. He told us nothing. He just laughed at us. What did he say?" Thexelar asked. Ralvex hesitated. "He said we had no idea what we had started. He said humans do not know how to surrender. He said we would all die here." "Empty threats," Thexelar said, but his voice lacked conviction. He had heard similar words from Admiral Chen Wei before the invasion began. He had dismissed them then. He could not dismiss them anymore. "General," another commander said, "we need to discuss the human tactics. They are not fighting according to any recognized rules of warfare. They use methods that are forbidden by the Galactic Convention." "Explain," Thexelar ordered. The commander pulled up images on the display screen. "They camouflage themselves. They wear clothing that matches their environment. They paint their faces. They cover their heat signatures. Our sensors cannot detect them until it is too late." He changed the image. "They fight at night. They attack when we cannot see them. They use the darkness as a weapon." Another image appeared. "They booby-trap everything, roads, buildings, vehicles, even bodies. We lost an entire squad yesterday when they tried to recover their fallen comrades. The humans had placed explosives on the bodies." Thexelar felt sick. "That is barbaric. There is more, sir. They fake surrenders. They pretend to give up, then they attack when we approach. They use civilians as shields. They hide weapons in hospitals and schools. They break every rule. Why?" Thexelar asked. "Why do they fight this way? It is dishonorable. It is uncivilized." A Zarnoth cultural liaison stepped forward. His name was Kiximol, and he had spent years studying primitive species. "General, with your permission, I would like to show you something." Thexelar nodded. Kiximol activated a data display. "I have been researching human history. What I have found is disturbing. The humans have been at war for their entire existence. They have never known true peace. Their history is one continuous record of conflict." Numbers and dates scrolled across the screen. "In the last 5,000 years, they have fought more than 14,000 major wars. That does not count minor conflicts, rebellions, or civil wars. They fight constantly. They fight each other. They fight over land. They fight over resources. They fight over ideas and beliefs." Thexelar stared at the numbers. "That is impossible. No species could survive that much warfare." "Yet they did survive, sir. More than that. They thrived. Each war made them stronger. Each conflict taught them new ways to kill. They have been perfecting the art of warfare for thousands of years." Kixmol brought up more data. "Look at this. They have written books about war. Hundreds of books. Thousands of books. They have entire academies dedicated to studying warfare. They have a human named Sun Tzu, who wrote about war strategy 2,500 years ago. They still study his work today. They have something called guerrilla warfare. It means fighting without formal armies, striking from hiding, avoiding direct combat. It is exactly what they are doing to us now. They have been practicing these tactics for centuries." The screen changed again. "They have terms for different types of warfare. Totalvar, where everything and everyone is a target. Scorched earth, where they destroy everything as they retreat. Psychological warfare, where they attack the mind as well as the body. They have suicide attacks, warriors who deliberately sacrifice themselves to kill the enemy. They have weapons of mass destruction. Nuclear bombs, chemical weapons, biological weapons. They have used all of these against each other." Thexelar felt cold. "Against each other? They use these weapons on their own species?" "Yes, sir. Many times. And that is not the worst part. What could be worse?" Kixmol pulled up another file. "They have been preparing for our arrival. For over 100 years, they have imagined alien invasions. They have made entertainment about it. Films, books, games. They have spent decades thinking about how to fight aliens. They have planned for this. They have trained for this. Their military academies run simulation exercises on alien invasion scenarios. They're special forces trained for unconventional warfare. Every adult human has some basic military training. Every household has weapons. They are a militarized society. The room fell silent. Every commander looked at each other. They were beginning to understand what they had gotten into. Thexaler stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the empty city. Somewhere out there, humans were watching, planning, preparing their next attack. "We are not fighting a civilization," he said quietly. "We are fighting something else. Something that has been shaped by 10,000 years of constant war. We are fighting a species that was born in violence and raised in conflict." He turned back to his commanders. "Send a message to the Imperium. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them this conquest will take longer than planned. Tell them the humans are more dangerous than we thought." But even as he gave the orders, Thexalar wondered if reinforcements would be enough. The humans had 8 billion people on this planet. If even a fraction of them were fighters, if even a small percentage resisted, then the Zarnoth were facing an army larger than anything they had ever encountered. That night, Thexalar could not sleep. He kept thinking about what Kixmal had said. 10,000 years of war, thousands of conflicts, millions of dead, and the humans were still here, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. What kind of species learned to live with such violence? What kind of people made war their natural state? What kind of beings never learned to give up? The answer came to him as he stared into the darkness. They were not people. They were not beings. They were something evolution had created through endless conflict. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were weapons that had learned to walk and talk and think. And General Thexalar had brought 200 ships and 100,000 soldiers to conquer them. It suddenly seemed like a very small force, a pathetically small force. Outside his window, somewhere in the darkness, a Zarnoth patrol screamed. Then silence. Another squad gone. Another group of soldiers who would never return home. The conquest had only just begun. And General Thexalar was starting to realize that it might never end. 3 months into the occupation, General Thexalar received a visitor from the Imperium High Council. Ambassador Vextor arrived on the Crimson Dawn with an inspection team. They wanted to see why the conquest was taking so long. They wanted to know why casualties were so high. Thexalar met them in his command center. The ambassador was old and respected. He had overseen dozens of successful conquests. He did not look happy. "General Thexalar," Vextor said, "the council is concerned. You have lost over 40,000 soldiers. That is more than we lost in our last 10 conquests combined. What is happening here?" "Ambassador, the humans are not like other species. They fight differently. They do not follow the rules of civilized warfare." Vextor waved his hand dismissively. "Every primitive species claims to be different. Every backward world thinks they are special. You have 200 warships and 100,000 soldiers. How can you not control one small planet?" Thexalar felt anger rise in his chest. The ambassador had never faced humans in combat. He had never seen what they were capable of. "With respect, Ambassador, you do not understand what we are dealing with." "Then show me," Vextor said. "Take me to the surface. Let me see these terrifying humans for myself." It was a bad idea. Thexalar knew it was a bad idea, but he could not refuse the ambassador. He arranged for a secure transport to the surface. Heavy escort, best troops. They would visit a secured area in what the humans called Colorado. It should be safe. They landed in a valley surrounded by mountains. The Zarnoth had established a forward base here. 2,000 soldiers, strong defenses, regular patrols. It was one of the most secure positions on the planet. Vextor looked around at the rocky terrain. "It looks peaceful enough." "It is not," Thexalar said. "The humans control the high ground. They watch us from the mountains. They attack our patrols. We lose soldiers every day." "Then send your soldiers into the mountains," Vextor said. "Hunt them down." "We tried, sir. We sent 3 companies into those mountains last week. Only 12 soldiers came back. The humans know every cave, every trail, every hiding spot. They lead our troops into ambushes. They pick them off one by one. The survivors reported that the humans were invisible. They heard sounds in the darkness, whispers, footsteps, then their comrades started disappearing." Vextor looked skeptical. "That sounds like cowardice talking. Your soldiers need better discipline." Before Thexalar could respond, alarms began blaring. The base commander rushed over. "Sir, we have movement in the northern sector." Possible hostile contact. Show me, Thexalar ordered. They moved to the command center. Sensor displays showed heat signatures in the mountains. At least 50 humans, maybe more. They were moving toward the base. Finally, Vexter said, a direct attack. Now we can show these primitives the power of Zarnoth military might. Thexalar was not so confident. The humans rarely attacked directly. When they did, they had a reason. A plan. Deploy defensive positions, he ordered. Activate all sensors. Watch for flanking movements. The base came alive with activity. Soldiers moved to fighting positions. Weapons charged. Shields activated. They were ready for anything, or so they thought. The human attack came from 3 directions at once. Not from the mountains where the sensors had detected them. From inside the base. From positions the humans had infiltrated days or weeks earlier. Explosions ripped through the command center. The communications building collapsed. The armory erupted in flames. In seconds, the base was in chaos. Thexalar grabbed Vextor and pulled him down behind cover. Weapons fire filled the air. Zarnoth soldiers screamed and fell. The ambassador stared in shock at the destruction. How? Vextor shouted over the noise. How did they get inside? They are experts at infiltration, Thexalar shouted back. They can hide in plain sight. They can blend into any environment. They've probably been here for days, waiting for the right moment. The heat signatures in the mountains had been a distraction, a trick to focus attention away from the real threat. And it had worked perfectly. Zarnoth soldiers tried to form defensive lines. But the humans were everywhere and nowhere. They appeared from shadows. They struck from behind. They moved like ghosts through the smoke and fire. Thexalar saw one human warrior clearly for the first time. It was a female. She wore green and brown clothing that matched the terrain. Her face was painted with dark colors. She moved with impossible speed and precision. She fired her weapon and 3 Zarnoth soldiers fell. Then she vanished into the smoke. The battle lasted 20 minutes. Then as suddenly as it began, it ended. The humans withdrew. They disappeared back into the mountains, leaving behind a destroyed base and hundreds of dead Zarnoth soldiers. Thexalar stood up slowly. Around him, the base was in ruins. Fire burned everywhere. Wounded soldiers cried out for help. The dead lay scattered across the ground. Vextor stood beside him. The ambassador's face was pale. His hands shook. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 20 minutes. They left something, a soldier called out. Thexalar walked over. There was a message written in the Zarnoth language on the wall of a destroyed building. It said, "You cannot win. Leave while you still can." Vextor read the message. He said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I need to return to the flagship. I need to make a report to the council." Back on the Crimson Dawn, Vextor requested all intelligence files on human warfare. He spent 3 days reading. 3 days learning about human history. 3 days understanding what the Zarnoth had gotten into. On the 4th day, he called Thexalar to his quarters. The ambassador looked tired and frightened. "I have been reading about human warfare," Vextor said. "I have learned about their history, their tactics, their weapons, their mindset." He pulled up images on his display. "Did you know the humans invented something called trench warfare? They dug holes in the ground and lived in them for years. Millions of them died fighting over a few meters of land. And they kept fighting. They never gave up. Did you know they created nuclear weapons? Bombs that could destroy entire cities. And they used them. On themselves. They killed hundreds of thousands of their own species. And they survived. They rebuilt. They continued. Did you know they have a saying? Never give up. Never surrender. It is not just words. It is their fundamental nature. They do not know how to quit. They do not understand the concept of acceptable losses. They will fight until they win or until they are all dead." Vextor looked at Thexalar. "You were right, General. These are not like other species. They are not civilized in any way we understand. They are something else entirely. They are war-made flesh. They are violence given form. What will you tell the council?" Thexalar asked. "The truth," Vextor said. "That we have made a terrible mistake. That Earth cannot be conquered. Not with conventional warfare. Not with the forces we have. Maybe not at all." He stood up and walked to the window. Earth hung in space below them. "Beautiful and deadly. I will recommend immediate withdrawal," Vextor continued. "I will recommend that Earth be declared a forbidden world. I will recommend that we establish an exclusion zone and never return. The council may not agree." Thexalar said. Then they will send more soldiers to die, Vextor said. And eventually they will reach the same conclusion I have. The humans are not prey. They are not victims. They are predators, and we have walked into their territory. Thexalar knew the ambassador was right, but he also knew the Imperium. They would not give up easily. They would send reinforcements. They would try new tactics. They would waste more lives before admitting defeat. And the humans, they would keep fighting. They would keep killing. They would never stop. Because that was what they were. That was what they had always been. Warriors, survivors, devils who refused to die. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. General Thexalar stood in his command center and looked at the casualty reports. The numbers made him feel sick. 70,000 Zarnoth soldiers dead, another 30,000 wounded, 15,000 missing, presumably captured or killed. The Imperium had sent reinforcements, 3 times. Each time the humans had adapted. Each time the casualties had climbed higher. The Council refused to admit defeat, but Thexalar could see the truth. The Zarnoth were losing. Slowly but certainly they were losing. The humans had grown bolder. They no longer just struck from hiding. They launched coordinated attacks on multiple targets. They had started using captured Zarnoth weapons. Somehow, impossibly, they had figured out how the technology worked. They were reverse engineering everything they captured. "Sir, we have reports of increased activity in the North American sector," his tactical officer said. "Multiple resistance cells are moving toward our positions. It looks like they are preparing for a major offensive." Thexalar nodded. He had been expecting something like this. The humans had been quiet for 2 weeks. That always meant they were planning something big. Increased offensive patrols. Alert all units. Prepare for sustained combat. The attack began at midnight. It was coordinated across the entire planet. Every Zarnoth position came under assault simultaneously. The humans had somehow organized a global offensive without the Zarnoth detecting it. But this time was different. This time Thexalar saw something that truly terrified him. He saw human special forces in action. They came in the night, dressed in black. They moved without sound. They killed without mercy. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were hunters. These were killers trained to perfection. Thexalar watched through security cameras as a team of 6 humans infiltrated a Zarnoth base. They moved like shadows. Each movement was precise. Each kill was silent. They disabled alarm systems. They avoided sensors. They killed 200 Zarnoth soldiers before anyone even knew they were there. One camera caught a close view of a human soldier. The man looked directly at the camera. His eyes were cold, empty. He smiled, then shot out the camera. That smile haunted Thexalar. It was not the smile of someone who hated. It was the smile of someone who enjoyed what he was doing. Someone who was good at killing and knew it. Reports came in from other positions. Similar attacks everywhere. Human special forces striking command centers, supply depots, communication hubs. They were taking apart the Zarnoth infrastructure piece by piece. Then came the truly horrifying reports. From the European theater, from Asia, from South America, Zarnoth soldiers were disappearing. Not killed in battle, just vanishing, gone without a trace. Search parties found some of them days later. They were alive but broken. Their minds were shattered. They babbled about humans who appeared in the darkness, about voices that whispered in their heads, about fear so intense they could not move or think. Psychological warfare. The humans were using terror as a weapon. They were not just killing Zarnoth soldiers. They were breaking their spirits. They were making the survivors afraid to patrol, afraid to sleep, afraid to be alone. One report particularly disturbed Thexalar. A Zarnoth unit had been trapped in a cave system for 3 days. The humans had not killed them. They had just kept them there, in the darkness. Playing sounds, strange sounds, screaming, laughter, whispers in the Zarnoth language saying they were all going to die. When the unit was finally rescued, half the soldiers were catatonic. The other half were violent and paranoid. None of them would ever fight again. "This is madness," Thexalar said to his officers. "They are not just fighting us. They are trying to drive us insane." "It is working, sir," one commander admitted. "Morale is collapsing. Soldiers are refusing to go on patrol. Some are asking to be sent home. Others are desertion. In 200 years of Imperium expansion, Zarnoth soldiers had never deserted. But the humans had broken them. These creatures who should have been defeated months ago had turned the Zarnoth military into a frightened, demoralized mob. Then came the worst day of the invasion. The day that broke General Thexelar completely. It started with an alert. Human forces were approaching his command center. Not a small team, not a quick strike, an army. Thousands of humans, armed with both their weapons and captured Zarnoth equipment. Activate all defenses, Thexelar ordered. This is it? They are coming for us. The battle was fierce. The humans attacked in waves. They used artillery. They used airstrikes with captured Zarnoth aircraft. They used tactics that seemed impossible for primitives to know. But what scared Thexelar most was their determination. Humans fell by the hundreds, and they kept coming. They climbed over the bodies of their dead. They charged through fire and explosions. They did not slow down. They did not retreat. They just kept attacking. He watched one human get shot 3 times. The human fell. Then he got back up. He continued fighting. He killed 2 more Zarnoth soldiers before finally dying. What kind of species could do that? What kind of beings refused to die even when they were already dead? The defenses held, but barely. When the attack finally ended, Thexelar looked at the battlefield. Thousands of dead humans, but also thousands of dead Zarnoth soldiers. A draw. Against primitives with inferior technology, the Zarnoth military had fought to a draw. That night something happened that Thexelar had never experienced before. Human soldiers infiltrated his personal quarters on the Crimson Dawn. Somehow they had gotten onto his flagship, past all security, past all defenses. Thexelar woke to find a human standing over his bed. A female, she held a knife to his throat. Other humans stood in the shadows of his room. They had killed his guards without making a sound. The human spoke in perfect Zarnoth language. I am Admiral Chen Wei. We could kill you right now. It would be easy. But we want you to deliver a message to your Imperium. Thexelar could not move, could not speak. He had never felt such fear in his life. This human had penetrated all his defenses. She held his life in her hands, and she was choosing to let him live. Tell them, Chen Wei said quietly, that humans do not surrender. Tell them we will fight for 1,000 years if we must. Tell them we will follow you to your homeworld if you do not leave. Tell them we are not afraid to die. We are only afraid to fail. She leaned closer. Tell them that you made a mistake coming here. Tell them that Earth is not worth the cost. Tell them to leave while they still can. Because if you stay, we will kill every single one of you. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Then she smiled. It was the same smile Thexelar had seen on the camera footage. The smile of someone who enjoyed their work. Go back to your council, General. Tell them about us. Tell them what we are. Tell them never to come back. The humans vanished as silently as they had come. Thexelar lay in his bed, shaking. His guards were dead. His security had been worthless. The humans had proven they could kill him whenever they wanted. He had been spared only because they chose to spare him. So he could deliver their message. So he could warn the Imperium about what awaited them if they continued. General Thexelar, conqueror of 47 worlds, sat in the darkness and cried. Not from shame, not from anger, from pure primal terror, because he had finally understood the truth. The humans were not primitives. They were not victims. They were something that evolution had spent 10,000 years perfecting. They were war incarnate. They were death walking on 2 legs. They were devils who had learned to smile, and the Zarnoth had made the terrible mistake of attacking their home. The evacuation began 1 week later. General Thexelar ordered all Zarnoth forces to withdraw from Earth. The Council had argued. They had called him a coward. They had threatened to replace him. But then they had watched the recordings. They had seen what the humans could do. They had understood. The withdrawal took 3 weeks. 3 more weeks of losses. The humans harassed every retreating unit. They attacked supply convoys. They destroyed landing sites. They made sure the Zarnoth paid for every step they took off the planet. By the time the last Zarnoth soldier left Earth, the casualties had exceeded 300,000. 300,000 Zarnoth dead for nothing. They had gained nothing, conquered nothing, achieved nothing except the total destruction of their reputation as unstoppable conquerors. Thexelar stood on the bridge of the Crimson Dawn and watched Earth shrink in the distance. The blue planet that had destroyed his career, the small world that had broken the Zarnoth military, the home of creatures that refuse to be conquered. Set course for Zarnoth Prime, he ordered quietly. The journey home took 2 months. 2 months for Thexelar to prepare his report. 2 months to gather evidence. 2 months to organize his thoughts into something the Council would understand. When the Crimson Dawn arrived at Zarnoth Prime, Thexelar was immediately summoned to appear before the Council of Dominion. The 7 council members sat on their high seats and looked down at him with expressions of anger and disappointment. General Thexelar, the first counselor said, "You have presided over the greatest military disaster in Zarnoth history. You lost 300,000 soldiers. You abandoned a conquest. You retreated in defeat. Explain yourself." Thexelar stood straight. He had prepared for this. He had known it would be difficult. But they needed to understand. The entire Imperium needed to understand what they had faced on Earth. "Honored Council," he began. "I did not retreat in defeat. I retreated to save what remained of our forces. I retreated because continuing the invasion would have been suicide." "Suicide?" The second counselor scoffed. "Against primitives? Against beings who had not even achieved interstellar travel." "They are not primitives," Thexelar said firmly. "That is what we thought. That is what we were wrong about. The humans are something we have never encountered before." He activated the holographic display. Images appeared above the council chamber. Human warriors. Destroyed Zarnoth bases. Casualty reports. Battle footage. "The humans have been at war for their entire existence," Thexelar said. 10,000 years of continuous conflict. They do not know peace. They do not understand surrender. War is not something they do. It is what they are. He showed footage of human attacks, night raids, ambushes, psychological warfare. The council watched in silence. "They do not follow the Galactic Convention on Warfare," Thexelar continued. "They use camouflage. They attack at night. They employ terror tactics. They booby-trap their dead. They fake surrenders. They target supply lines. They use every method of warfare we consider uncivilized or forbidden. But that is not the worst part," he said. "The worst part is their nature. They do not fight to win territory. They fight to exterminate threats. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They will sacrifice everything to protect their home. They are not afraid to die. They are only afraid to fail." The third counselor leaned forward. "You are saying we cannot defeat them?" "I am saying that defeating them would require resources we cannot afford to spend," Thexelar said. "We would need to commit millions of soldiers. We would need to be prepared for decades of warfare. We would need to accept casualties on a scale we have never seen, and even then we might fail." He showed more footage. The final battles. The destroyed bases. The broken soldiers. "Every human is a potential soldier," Thexelar said. "Their entire culture is built around competition and conflict. They train their young in combat sports. They teach their children about war. They make entertainment about fighting and surviving. They are a weaponized species." He pulled up historical data. "They have weapons we cannot defend against. Not advanced technology, but methods, strategies, tactics refined over thousands of years. They wrote books about warfare before we achieved space travel. They have studied war longer than we have studied anything." The fourth counselor spoke. "What do you recommend?" Thexelar took a deep breath. "I recommend that Earth be declared a forbidden world. I recommend we establish an exclusion zone of 50 light years. I recommend that any ship that approaches Earth be turned back. And I recommend that we never ever attempt to conquer that planet again." "You would have us run from primitives?" the fifth counselor asked. "I would have us survive," Thexelar said. "Because if we continue to antagonize the humans, they will not stay on their world. They captured our technology. They reverse-engineered our weapons. They learned from us. How long before they build their own spaceships? How long before they come looking for us?" He let that sink in. The council members looked at each other. They had not considered that possibility. An enemy that could learn, that could adapt, that could follow them home. "What would happen," Thexelar asked quietly, "if humans achieved our level of technology? What would happen if these beings, these warriors who have spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, gained access to the stars? They would not stop at defense. They would not stop at protecting their world. They would expand. They would explore. And everything they encountered they would judge as either friend or threat. We attacked them. We tried to conquer them. We are the threat. If they develop space travel, where do you think they will go first?" The silence in the council chamber was complete. Every council member understood. The humans were not just dangerous now. They were potentially catastrophic in the future. And the Zarnoth had just given them every reason to become their enemy. The first counselor stood up. General Thexelar, your report is accepted. Earth will be declared a forbidden world. The exclusion zone will be established. All Imperium vessels will be ordered to avoid human space. He paused. And your service to the Imperium is recognized. You did not fail, General. You saved us from a much greater disaster. You are dismissed with honor. Thexelar bowed and left the council chamber. It was over. He had done his duty. He had delivered the warning. The Imperium would stay away from Earth. But as he walked through the corridors of the council building, he could not shake a feeling of dread. Because he knew the truth. The humans would not stay on their planet forever. They were curious. They were ambitious. They were driven to explore and expand. One day, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 100, the humans would come to the stars. And when they did, the galaxy would learn what General Thexelar had learned. That humanity was not a civilization. Humanity was a force of nature, an evolutionary weapon. Devils who walked like angels until someone threatened their home. On Earth, Admiral Chen Wei stood in the ruins of Washington and looked up at the night sky. The aliens were gone. The invasion had failed. Humanity had won, but the victory had come at a cost. Millions of humans had died. Cities were destroyed. Economies were shattered. It would take decades to rebuild. But humanity had also gained something. Technology, knowledge, understanding. They had captured Zarnoth equipment. They had studied alien ships. They had learned that they were not alone in the universe. And they had learned that the universe was hostile. A young officer approached. Admiral, the engineers have finished their analysis of the captured Zarnoth vessels. They believe they can replicate the propulsion systems within 5 years. We could have our own interstellar ships within a decade. Chen Wei smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had fought and won. Someone who had learned that the best defense was to be strong enough that no one dared attack. Good, she said. Start immediately, and prepare defensive positions in orbit. If they come back, we will be ready. And if they do not come back, we will go find them. She looked up at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the aliens were telling stories about Earth. About the humans who refused to surrender. About the devils who had destroyed an invasion force. Let them tell their stories. Let them fear. Because humanity had learned an important lesson. They were not alone. And if they were not alone, they needed to be strong. They needed to be ready. They needed to make sure that no one ever tried to conquer Earth again. The age of Earth's isolation was over. The age of humanity's expansion was about to begin. And the galaxy would learn what it meant to face a species that had spent 10,000 years learning how to survive, how to fight, how to win. The aliens had come to conquer Earth. Instead, they had given humanity the stars, and that was the greatest mistake they could have made.